Now, it's going to be a very similar discussion to last week, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. A decent display at St Mary's saw Saints beat Norwich 2-0 with a goal in either half. Let's start with you tonight, Dan. Did Norwich make that difficult? It was quite a narrow game. It felt like we had to work a bit harder than maybe we've all thought for the points.
I think it looked harder than it probably was for the players, if that makes sense. I don't know if that does make sense, but it looked at times kind of like Norwich, where they were applying pressure without really applying any pressure, if that makes sense. They didn't ever really, you never felt that Norwich were going to score or do anything like that. But they did have moments in the second half when it was still 1-0 that you thought, oh, they are on top here, kind of shooting towards their fans. The fans were getting a bit more up for it. I must say, actually, I thought that the Saints fans were excellent on Friday night.
The atmosphere was incredible, wasn't it?
It was really good, wasn't it? And I do think Saints brass add a lot to it. I think that really does get people going. It certainly gets me going anyway at the beginning. But no, I thought it was just one of those games where Norwich, they're just not very good. They're going to go back down, aren't they? That's kind of obvious. Could have been 4-0, 5-0 for Southampton if they shot any other way but at Angus Gunn. So, it was a very comfortable night, but Norwich did make it look more difficult than it was at times.
Steve, what did you make of Friday night? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty easy, wasn't it? I think 2-0, as Dan suggested there, I think 2-0 flattered Norwich a fair bit. But I'm sure, the whole shooting straight at Angus Gunn thing, I was absolutely convinced at one point that basically we just watched that 9-0 Leicester game back, saw all the shots going through him and thought, that's the way to score. We're going to hit the ball straight at him. That would be absolutely perfect. And he'll just move out of the way. But no, it didn't happen. And a little bit frustrating because, our performances of late have deserved bigger wins than we've had. I kind of get that I may be being a little bit sort of over-egging the pudding a little bit there and sort of not sort of taking the wins as and when they come. But I think we shouldn't have a negative goal difference anymore based on the last handful of games. Spurs away, we should have won by 3 or 4. Everton, we definitely should have won by 3 or 4. And Friday night could have been any scoreline. As I say, it kind of felt too easy at times. First half, I thought we were possibly a little bit lacking intensity at times. But it was always a case of we are going to score. It's just a case of when. And it was just, I guess that's one of the things that we've become an awful lot better at, not just the team but the fan base as well, of being really patient with the game. That we know that we'll create chances, particularly against bad defences. We'll create chances and it will come. You've just got to be patient with it. Everton, we didn't score until the second half, when half time we could have been, that game could have been done and dusted then as well. Friday night, the chances that we created first half probably weren't actually of the same quality. But second half we were much better in terms of the quality of chances we were creating. It was just once again the finishing letting us down a little bit. And I guess that'll probably be the only downside, sort of negative that Ralph might look at with the analysts, in terms of, okay, we're now creating all these chances. We've just got to be a lot better at taking them, because against the better sides, you won't create as many. So you've just got to be a little bit sharper in the box there.
And Ben, on paper, another straightforward win. What were your initial thoughts after watching that?
Yeah, I agree with the guys. I thought it was a very comfortable, routine Premier League win. I think nothing would have been more Saints, Martin, would it, than they've gone to Spurs and won, drawn at Old Trafford, lose at home to the bottom team. So I think for me, it's kind of an indication of the mindset that this team now has, that they treated that like a professional game. They went out there with the right attitude. I think, as Steve said, I think we ended up 27 shots to 8 or something like that. So there was lots and lots of efforts. But there was 7, 8, 9s out of 10 still across the pitch. I'm sure we'll come on to talk about Oriel in a minute. I thought he led by example, and I never really felt nervous. We were talking about it just before we came on air. For me, it feels a little bit more like the Koeman days. We used to turn up thinking that team will compete. They've got every chance of winning this game, whoever we were playing. And at the moment, with the run that Saints are going through, it feels very similar.
Yeah, I was saying, walking to the game, you kind of think it's very much, this would be very Saints-like to lose a game like this. But actually, in your heart of hearts, you thought, no, we're not gonna make a mess of it, and that's the confidence that they're playing with at the moment. So, Dan, just on the starting 11, no surprises, I guess, to see Kyle Walker-Peters keeping his place at left back.
No, none at all. I thought Perot may have come back in, but then it's like we kind of said last week, and it's the clip I saw on TikTok actually about Livramento coming in, getting the assist against Everton, and basically saying, don't drop me now, Ralph. And yeah, it's just a really good place to be in, that you can have that quality on the bench. So no surprises really, but it wasn't even a surprise seeing Livramento start, so none for me.
And Steve, that tactical change with Stevens coming on, we seem to be quite used to playing with that switch now. When he comes on, that we're going to shore things up, and they're used to that. They seem really well drilled.
Yeah, there was kind of a 5-minute period where Norwich had kind of got a bit more of a foothold in the game. They'd not really created a whole lot other than that Grant Hanley header where he skewed it miles wide. But you just kind of felt that, okay, we just need to kind of just put a bit of a break on this, grab control of the midfield back again. So bringing Stevens in allowed us to kind of go 3 at the back and effectively a 4 across the midfield, with the wing backs effectively playing in midfield. Really, it just gave us a little bit more control, and yeah, we were able to see it out, and obviously got added the second late on in fairly spectacular style. I mean, he only scores good goals, doesn't he? Really, it's been a while since he scored a tap in. I think the only one he's got for us was it against Palace, maybe, from fairly close range, bundled in the corner, maybe a few years back. But other than that, like, most of his strikes are from sort of the edge of the area. I mean, that one against West Brom, I thought would be hard to beat, that sort of flying volley, but the technique he showed for the one on Friday night was extraordinary. I did find it weird seeing a few people sort of claiming, Angus Gunn should be doing better with that. It's like, I mean, he's hit it about as hard as you could possibly hit a ball, and it's not gone far off. I mean, it's not right in the top corner, certainly, but the pace it's come at and through a couple of defenders, there's no way the keeper's getting anything on that.
Yeah, and you won't find us being rude about a goalkeeper. So let's just go through the 2 goals. Shea Adams hooking it in whilst laying on his back. But he's not going to score another goal like that, is he?
Do you know what? At the time, you didn't actually realise what a good finish it was. It was only kind of when you saw the replays, and it was all a little bit Sunday League just before that, wasn't it? Like Brandon Williams
laying on the keeper, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Williams obviously tried to tackle it, and that inadvertently actually made it better for Livramento. His cross, then Aaron's tried to clear it, messed it up. Shea then had a swing, it hit him in the chest, and he's lying on the floor. Gunn goes down to try and pick it up, and as he does, he scoops it up into the top of that. I mean, it was a really, really good finish, and I think I saw Dan tweet after the game that's 8 and 15 for him now, and I think I saw a stat of like 20 and 86 or something like that. But I mean, 8 and 15, if he's scoring 1 in every 2, I think it's a real indication of his form and his confidence at the moment. And as I say, a brilliant finish, and probably just when we needed it, because as Steve mentioned earlier, we'd had a few chances, and you sort of felt, when's that first goal going to come? Just before half time, it kind of gave the Saints the momentum they needed. It
looked like, when I saw that the Adams goal before seeing a replay, I immediately thought to myself, he's tried to do everything but score in that situation. And then when you see it slowed down, you actually appreciate that it was quite a good finish.
Bit of technique, a bit of tactics. And obviously a word on Romeo, Dan. I always get nervous when he shapes to shoot. I think that was his 3rd shot on target, maybe in the Premier League this season, but perhaps, I'm doing him a disservice. He an outstanding all-round performance on Friday.
It was. I jokingly asked Ralph, actually. I think where Ralph lives is in the direction of where Romeo was shooting, and I thought, did you kind of fear for your window when you saw Romeo lining up on the edge of the box? And Ralph was like, he does it in training all the time. But I think Ori came out afterwards and said it was the best goal he's ever scored. But I think with Ori, we've all come to expect, like, he's always a solid 7 out of 10, but he can go up to 8, 9 out of 10. He's just a class act. And the thing about Romeo is that and I was going to tweet this, but I didn't in the end, but you'll struggle to find a nicer person. Like, genuinely, you will struggle to find a nicer guy playing football. He is just an all-round top bloke. And I think Southampton are so lucky to have a player like him, and his character, his temperament. He turns up. Okay, it's kind of cliche, but he turns up every single day. Is such a brilliant example for the young players coming through. They do look at him. He's more than happy to kind of give them advice, help them bed them into the first team environment. He's just a super guy, and he's along with Prowse, they just look really good at the moment, don't they? As a midfield pair, and they look so accomplished. They're so in tune with each other's game. They know where each one is going to be, and it's really paying off, because I can't remember the last time Southampton lost a midfield battle. They've just been. I know Everton didn't have a midfield, so they weren't going to lose that one. I mean, that was a relatively straightforward one. But even beyond that, they're just two players in total control of everything at the moment. And Romeo is just. I mean, when he's at his best, he's a joy to watch. For me,
the interesting point I was going to make, Dan, and you'll have noticed this having watched Saints for a couple of seasons now, is it was evident on Friday. He gets the ball. He now looks forward. He looks to play quickly and pass the ball forward. And I think that was a real issue for him over the sort of start of his career with Saints, was that he would get it, slow the play down, and then automatically look to play backwards. And I think it's really good to show the development. He, as you said, he's so well-rounded as a footballer now, but that's something that really stands out. He gets the ball. He looks to shift it on quickly and forwards.
No, definitely. And when Ralph's kind of talking about the more experienced players, he always says it takes them a little bit longer because their hard drive is more full than like a Nathan Teller, for example. So Romeo's played for several different managers, different systems or whatever, so it takes him a little bit longer. But I remember interviewing Romeo in back end of 2020, and he said to me, I could shut my eyes and I know where Ralph wants me to be in any kind of given moment. But as Ben mentioned, he really has, I think, added to his game the playing forward. Because the thing I always liked about Romeo was how comfortable he was in possession. If he's being pressed by 3 or 4 players, given his La Masia background, he's just so comfortable. I've always admired that. But now he can do that. And instead of kind of passing sideways or back to the defence or whatever, he can go forward. And I think that says a lot about the players in front of him at the moment. And it just goes back to that point of, this probably is Ralph's 11, I think. They all know exactly where each other's going to be. And that helps massively, I think, for Romeo.
It's taken him a while to get to his 11, but it certainly feels like we're there now. Steve, another clean sheet at home, so we need to talk about the back four, the keeper. Another great game for Salisu and Bednarek. They just seem to be getting better by the week as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty comfortable for the most part. I think the only time I was slightly worried was when both of them, both the centre-backs seemed to be in the same corner of the pitch. When Norwich had that early shot blocked, I think both Bednarek and Salisu ended up in the chasing the ball into the corner. But fortunately, we had enough covering players. But yeah, I mean, they've had 2 relatively comfortable games after. I mean, I have probably 5-6 games where it's been a lot more difficult. So they've earned that kind of rest period, I guess.
Yeah, and Dan, just a word on Adams and Brozier up front. We were talking about their partnership last week. Obviously, the goal for Adams, but another top effort from Brozier, I suppose. Never stopped running, did he, for the team? And he was unlucky. I still think he could pass a bit more maybe at the end and play somebody else in, but he's certainly terrifying the defences.
Yeah, he does. And given the form he's in, I think defenders are clearly aware of the threat. So him running in one direction will naturally drag a couple his way, which does open space for the players he doesn't pass to. But then at the same, it's like Glen said, at the end of the day, he's a striker. You almost want him to take the shots. You'd rather we'd all be sitting here if he was passing it all the time saying, why doesn't he just take the shot? Why doesn't he just take the shot? So I don't particularly have an issue with the fact that he may be greedy at times. He's a striker. You expect him to do that. But I was more impressed with Shea. I just think Shea, he's in that kind of in a run at the moment where he's just so good. You see him like running back to make a tackle in his own half. You see him haranguing the defenders in their half. He's just all over the place at the moment. Physically, he looks really good. I think he looks a lot more. He's always been a tall guy anyway, quite a big guy, but he looks a lot more muscly than he has done in the past. And it's just brilliant to see. They're clearly the club's best two strikers, and it's I mean, for as long as Brozier's there, let's enjoy it.
Ben, what's exciting you the most about the team at the moment?
I think just the fact that we've got competition for places, and I think the way that they're playing at the moment, I agree with what Dan said. For me, on Friday night, despite where KWP was playing, that I think is our strongest 11 at the moment. I think players like Al Yunisi deserve to be in the starting lineup. It's great to have Perot back. I totally agree with what you guys have been saying on the pod the last couple of weeks. He's had a really good 4 to 6 weeks, Perot. It's interesting now that it almost feels like, and you don't want this on any of the Saints players, that illness or injury is the only way that other players are going to now get back into the side. And that's what we wanted, right? That's what we didn't have the last couple of years, is that competition for spaces. So I think, totally agree with what Steve and Dan said. The team know what they're doing. They all know their roles. The 2 number 10s know exactly where they got to be. The strikers are running the channels. And you can just see the amount of effort that's gone in on the training ground, Martin, and how they are now taking that out onto the pitch, which is always the acid test, isn't it? It's fine doing it in front of a few bushes at Staplewood, but actually taking it out in front of 30,000 people at St Mary's, delivering, and they're getting results. And I think that is ultimately, as we all know, that's where players get the confidence from what the manager is trying to tell them to do. So all in all, you can't complain at the moment. Football's a game of up and downs, and we're absolutely on and up, and hopefully it'll carry on.
Just a point on Elyounoussi, because Alistair, who's one of our patrons, got in touch during the week, and he said, and I quote, "looked to be one of those duff players that we signed on a ridiculously long contract. But having finally found a place in the team, is it time to think about offering him another contract?" So I don't know where he's at in terms of his contract at the moment, Steve, but that's someone that's gone out on loan, proved a point, come back, and actually is starting to deliver now.
Yeah, we're getting there. It's been those situations are always tough. Players go out on loan. You never quite know whether they've gone out on loan with a view to, okay, we don't think you've got it. So therefore, we're sending you out on loan to see if you can kind of put yourself in the shop window for a team at a lower level, because that's where kind of we reckon you are. Or whether it's a case of, right, no, we just need you to go and get yourself fit and get yourself some sharpness and come back, and then maybe there's an opening for you. And I mean that's what we've seen.
Niall's watching on Facebook. He says, good point about both the strikers, but what about the Brozier situation? Do we need a plan for his exit now as well? That's something the club have kind of talked about, and they're going to be working on pretty hard, Dan. Either he's involved next season or he's not, and someone else will come in.
Yeah, it's almost out of in one sense, it's kind of out of Southampton's hands. All they can do is, if they want him, they can put a bid in. But if Brozier carries on the way he is, they're not going to be the only team interested, and they're probably not the only team interested in him now. I would still personally just wait until the end of the season to see where they're at with him, because Brozier's not lacking any confidence, and Lukaku's not exactly doing it at Chelsea at the moment. I'm not saying he would go to Chelsea and get in the team, but if Chelsea's saying to him, well, actually, you've got a very good chance if you come back here, I could see him equally going for that. It doesn't, from everything I'm told, it doesn't sound like another loan will be a possibility. So he's either going to go back to Chelsea and stay, or someone will have to come in and buy him. But I think Glen or Steve said it the other week, every goal he scores, his price will go up. And
somebody else will notice him too, won't they?
Yeah, Southampton haven't just been bought by Saudi Arabia. They're still going to have a budget that they and a limit that they can spend on players, and it will get to a point where it just isn't financially viable for them to go for Brozier if it is going to cost silly money. I mean, I don't particularly know what Brozier's worth. I've seen reports of kind of 35 to 40, which I think is crazy, to be honest. I don't think he's worth that much. But yeah, I couldn't see Saints kind of going into that range.
And Ben, is it just a case of worrying about the things we can control, and what will be?
Totally. I think the club have shown, haven't they, the last 12, 18 months that they've got a strategy, they've got a plan. They'll already be working towards the summer. I think that the takeover probably helps to almost push on that strategy. We now know we've got the money to go after the players we want to. And I agree with what Dan said. And to be fair, I agree with the comments that have come in recently. We've just got to enjoy him while he's here. What will happen in the summer. There's been a lot of talk, hasn't it, about him wanting to be happy where he's playing in the future, his family wanting to be happy. There won't be many clubs around like Saints that can offer him that. So what will be. And for the moment, it's just about him and Shea hopefully banging in the goals and trying to get us high up the league.
The other thing that Dan wrote about this week, we've talked about is Fraser Forster, Ben. I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this. We've talked about it over the last couple of weeks on the pod about the goalkeeping situation and what should go on there. Would you like to see Fraser sticking around next season? What would your best case scenario be for the goalkeepers next year?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been in the Fraser Forster camp. I think I tweeted at the start of the season that, he would have been my starter for the first game at Everton. Obviously, McCarthy came in, and to be fair, he did really, really well, didn't he? I think Forster's shown the last few weeks that he can, with a consistent run of games, offer the team something. I find him a little bit more communicative at the back. I find him a little bit more of a presence maybe than Maka is. But for me, they've obviously got a decision to make there. There's obviously been rumours that, and I know Dan's reported it, that McCarthy's already kind of signed a contract. So that may have already made their mind up, and this is all by the by. But ultimately, I think he's someone that, we know he's good mates with Prowse. We know that he's obviously well thought of around the club. It may well be that they actually decide we'll give him another year. We don't need to shop for a goalkeeper this summer. But I think we've spoken about it a lot, haven't we, on the pod? And I think it's the one position at the moment in the team that does need to be looked at, and they really need to sort of think about probably the longer term strategy. I wasn't surprised to see Angus Gunn go in the summer. I know that there's obviously been rumours about him potentially taking the shirt longer term, but I think for me at the moment they're the best two goalkeepers we've had over the last 3-4 years, and it probably is just a case of sorting out which one they want for next season onwards.
Yeah. And Steve, up to 9th now. Is that the best we can hope for? Is that kind of like the top of where we're aiming for? Is it about hanging on in there now and just staying ahead of Brighton, or do you think we can push on and try and catch the likes of Wolves?
I think given Wolves' absolute garbage performance today, by the sounds of it, we could catch them. 5 points for teams that are playing well isn't insurmountable with the number of games that we've got left. The problem is that obviously the teams above you are generally playing well as well. Wolves. As I say, Wolves weren't good today by all accounts, but they've been very good for the last few months. So maybe that was just a blip, and they'll be fine come next week. But if Wolves are going to have a stutter, then okay. If we can take advantage, great. I don't think it's completely beyond the realms of possibility. But obviously, with the start, kind of the autumn that we had, we've kind of given everybody a little bit of a head start, haven't we?
Yeah, and Dan, top 10 was talked about at the start of the season, and I know again you've mentioned that this week, but they'd be happy with that, wouldn't they? Ralph getting in, finishing the top half of the table for the first time since he's been here. That's going to be his aim. Well,
that was the target at the start of the season. They sat down and worked out, well, what can we do? They looked at so much data in terms of little tweaks that we can make here and there, in terms of schedule, workload, recovery. All sorts, and with the idea being finishing in the top 10. So that was a target in August, and as it stands, they're well on course to do that.
It's going to be a tough run of games though, Ben, because you look at Villa, Newcastle, Watford, Burnley, Leeds with the new manager, I guess, coming in, teams that are going to be fighting to stay in the division. So it's not going to be easy if we're going to maintain that 10th or 9th in the league.
No, not at all. But I think the positive for Saints now is that realistically, we're probably one win from safety, and ultimately the pressure, as we know, pressure is a funny thing in football, isn't it? Dan's laughing. He obviously thinks it's more than that. But, but what I would say...
I think they're about...
Safe already.
They're coming down. Yeah, they're safe already.
Yeah. But I suppose the point I'm making is that for Saints, Martin, the pressure's off. They can go out and enjoy all those games and play with an element of fluidity potentially and pick up more points than they might have if the pressure was on. So they've got nothing to lose now. Yeah, there's a few tough games. We've still got Chelsea, Arsenal and Liverpool, I think, at St Mary's as well. None of those are going to be easy, but there's 12 games left. There's no reason that they can't win half of those if they put in some really good performances.
Is there anything that worries you about that little run of games, Steve? Obviously, Newcastle in their leads with the new manager.
Newcastle have obviously picked up, but you kind of also have to look at the fixtures that they've had over the last month. They've had a very, very kind run in order to build up this bank of points that will now, disappointingly, almost certainly see them safe. But I would still put as massive favourites in that game a week on Thursday. And yeah, I've got no particular concerns. I'm kind of I'm not quite sure of the justification for them putting it on the Thursday. Was there anything clarified? Did Newcastle play Monday night or something? Because playing on a Thursday seems weird in a just sort of vaguely normal midweek. But yeah, I've got no concerns over that game other than Newcastle were slightly better than they were. Leeds, I'm not concerned about. If you look at their apparently they've got the 19th biggest wage bill in the league, which suggests that actually last season was a monumental overachievement. And I think when we beat them 1-0, we thrashed them 1-0, didn't we, at St Mary's? That game was so one-sided, it was embarrassing, and yet we only got the one early in the second half. I would, to be honest, I would kind of expect that side to struggle for the rest of the season. I think, obviously they've been missing two key players in Bamford and Phillips for the vast majority of this season. They're two quality players that a club with that wage bill, you can't miss those sort of players. Because you don't have the squad depth to be able to cope with it. That's kind of the sort of thing that we found last season, wasn't it? When you have a handful of important players unavailable, all of a sudden your first 11 is significantly weaker. And Leeds have found. What have they shipped? 20 goals this month. That's just extraordinary.
Whoever gets that job's going to have a big task on their hands.
Oh yeah, I don't think we even conceded 20 in the February after conceding nine on the second day of it. So that's some kind of implosion by their defence. You kind of wonder who's likely to have. Obviously, Richard Keys has obviously suggested Big Sam should take the job because obviously they're best mates. But it's
Jesse Marsh, isn't it?
Yeah, that seems to be the name that's going around. But it's difficult to see anybody who doesn't have experience of that team and this league kind of coming in and being able to hit the ground running. That seems a tall order for someone like him. I think an appointment of someone like Marsh, who I think the job he did at Salzburg was excellent, but didn't quite work for him at Leipzig. I think he's the sort of guy you bring in the summer, give him the full summer to work with the players. I just don't think they've got the time to go with a sort of system manager, if you like.
A couple of comments just to get through. Joe says Brozier's done brilliantly, but 30 to 40 million for a striker with 2 years in the first team is ridiculous. He needs to pick a club that's going to develop him further because he's still a little rough around the edges. I think we kind of covered that. We agree with that. So thanks, Joe. And Charlie, one for Dan. I know what the answer to this is, but he says, read the contracts. The perception is that some players have already been offered deals. Assuming that is correct, why are the clubs seemingly being so guarded in announcing them? It's the question we just don't have an answer to, isn't it, really?
Not the question for me, I'm afraid.
We need to be asking somebody at the club what's going on. It's very strange, very strange.